Something that's, in my opinion, pretty bullish for China just happened, or Chinese equities, I should say. And in this video, I'm going to talk about it. I just made a video on the other side, but look at this view now here in Beijing at this beautiful day. It's actually a nice sundown. You can see the mountains in the back. So yeah, let's use this nice panorama view to just make another video here. And the topic is about an IPO for Pony AI, which is a ride-hailing, autonomous driving startup here in China, having lots of connections to NIO, by the way, when it comes to employees, when it comes to investments and so on. But that's not the topic here. The topic here is the fact that this company is seeking to IPO at the New York Stock Exchange. And if you remember how the whole China sell-off started in 2021, I think one crucial moment was actually the Didi IPO, which went ahead despite warnings of regulators and authorities, because they had some fear about the data management and whether or not Didi would be compliant with local regulations here in China. But the investors, which included lots of foreign investors, they rushed ahead because IPO means that they can cash out their shares, and that's when they can realize the value, and they did. But this resulted in a crackdown and backlash by Beijing, which said, wait a minute, you're not gonna send all of our data, which includes rights of maybe politicians or famous people and so on, to the US, and that is a security issue, and we're not happy with the way how you've done that, raising money in the US, and therefore we're putting a hold on all of the IPOs by Chinese companies in the US. Well, now Pony AI is not the first company that is going to do an IPO again in the US. So this has eased over time. Basically, the Chinese regulators, the CSRC, has implemented a process of how IPOs should be done in the future. Basically, companies need to get an approval first to do an IPO overseas. They just can't do it again by themselves. There's lots of tricky regulation around it because, of course, you know, many Chinese companies are using something like VIEs in order to have an ADR somewhere in the Cayman Islands, and then that holding company is issuing shares on the New York Stock Exchange. There's basically a divide between the Chinese company and the US listed company and so on. Possibly if you've been investing in Chinese equities a bit longer, you know all about that. And so the question was like whether or not Chinese authorities actually have a say in that, or whether Chinese companies can just go ahead. But ultimately, you know, the crackdown was so hard that without an approval of the CSRC, basically it's impossible for a Chinese company to go IPO. Now we have Pony AI going IPO in the US, possibly, if everything's going all right. I think, of course, there might be still some political issues, who knows, with all of the geopolitics going on, and it's maybe not a done deal yet whether or not CSRC will make the approval, but they wouldn't file it if they weren't confident and haven't had some discussions before, because, you know, a Pony AI is basically a Didi IPO on steroids, because it's not only about ride-hailing and, you know, trips and where are people going, sensitive data and who's going and who's visiting who and whatever, but in this case it's even about autonomous driving on top of that, right? So lots of data issues, and the fact that they're now trying to do this IPO in the US should be a huge bullish sign, maybe on geopolitical relations between the US and China, which tells us that, you know, if they want to cooperate, there are ways, if just both sides are following the rules. And even on the matter of, you know, how to deal with data and so on, and capital allocation between the US and China in general. So that's how I see it. I mean, you know, if we say that the Didi IPO has been the starting point of the sell-off of Chinese equities, then a potential Pony AI IPO could well be, along with many other signs, be the reverse. Like, you know, Ant Financial possibly at some point going public and separated from Alibaba, Jack Ma becoming more vocal about Alibaba and its potential again. The other IPOs that by Chinese companies that happened before the Pony AI IPO and so on, you know, all of that are signs that I think investors should be kind of neutral about it and recognize that these things are happening and the whole crackdown story is basically over. That's my opinion. Let me know in the comments what's yours. Thanks for watching. See you in the next videos.